away from ours. So our program today is gonna be, see, pieces everywhere. So our program is about something that is quite curious. Hold on a second. It's about justice. It's a topic that we're like, oh my gosh, do I really need to hear about that? We do. Why? I'm just clicking on a few things here. Why is it important to talk about justice from the spiritual point of view? Why? Yes, please.
Because there is so much injustice in the world that we need to focus on justice at some point.
That's a good point. I agree with you. I see many people who sometimes are discouraged by seeing injustices in life. They are disillusioned with the world, right? So we're gonna begin. This topic is not only, it's based on the Spirit's book, on other books by Kardec, but mainly on a chapter in the book Evolution in Two Worlds by Andrea Lewis. That book, the whole series, the 40 chapters, is on the YouTube at Kardec Radio. You can watch, see the slides, the lessons that Marco Magalhães, Shane Martin and I ran throughout the series to explain each and every chapter. But this chapter in particular is very interesting. As our dear friend Ken mentioned to us, there are very good reasons that are current in our lives to put a pause in everything we're doing and contemplate what is justice and justice in immortal life. It's not only now. Because there are many things that we don't understand where justice is if we think from the perspective of one single life, right? But we're going to begin by telling a little bit of the story of this book. Really? What is Sex and Destiny to do with justice? So beautiful. And I have here the printout. And I have also the Kindle. The Kindle. So if you don't want to read here, you can read here. And if you speak Portuguese, you can listen to the audio novella. It's beautiful. On YouTube, free of charge. And if you speak English only, we have the whole thing also in Kardec Radio's podcast. So there's no escape. Either read or listen to it. And the beauty of it all is that we learn from the book the story of two families. It's in Rio de Janeiro, but it could be anywhere else. Okay, let's not blame on the city. The wonderful city, right? It's nothing to do with the city. It could be anywhere. It's just a drama that may pertain to many families' lives without noticing. And there is a moment, and I'm just going to tell this excerpt that ties into what we're going to see. One of the people in the story, one of them, Mr. Nogueira, he discarnates. In that life, he sexually harassed his own daughter. Oh, ouch. Super ouch. And he thought she was his adopted daughter. Anyhow, she was his daughter. He died in the dramatic way. I'm just cutting short on the story because I don't want to spoil the reading. It's a true story. Okay, true story. When he discarnates and is in the spiritual realm, he realizes the extent of his responsibility with the two families. So at some point, in a spiritual colony, in an institute, twin sisters, or twin siblings, however they name it in English, I forgot. They come, the mentors, and receive his request. He would like to go back as a discarnate spirit to the earth crust and help his family. Now, let me read from here. What happens, the description of the book. One second, because I'm just opening it here. Right here. And I'll read a little bit. André Luiz describes, we were touched by his request, but we had no authority to make a decision. André Luiz, another spirit, and another. They knew they were not in charge of saying yes you can or no you can't. This is very important for us to highlight, because often we make decisions that are not for us to be made. Authorities from the institute in the spiritual realm viewed the matter sympathetically and offered a basic measure for solving the impasse. They provided Mr. Nogueira was given permission, he would leave at the institute, although he could still work on behalf of his family members. So they are thinking about where is he going to stay, how is he going to be connected to the earth. So there's a lot of thinking about the strategies of it all. We thank them warmly, and one of the spirits, Priscilla, left almost immediately as messenger. She would advocate for Mr. Nogueira's cause at the institute. She was his mother in the previous life. She evolved. She was given the permission to help and advocate for him. Convinced that the mentor of the families would lend her his prestige and sponsorship. In fact, Priscilla returned the next day with the necessary authorization. Mr. Nogueira would be allowed to watch over his family for 10 years before moving up to the next circles of the spiritual world to be evaluated with regard to his latest existence. The providence reserved for itself the right to amend the concession, whether by extending the time if Claudio or Mr. Nogueira was doing well at fulfilling his promises, or by canceling the license if he proved to be unworthy of it. So it was like probation. The petitioner, observe the language they are using: authorities, permission, evaluation, petitioner, was satisfied. The petitioner was satisfied, exuberant. Encouraged by the support he was receiving, he asked for collaboration in returning to the earth. He felt weak and hesitant. Measures were taken. Okay, there's a lot. Why we're saying this? Because often we're here reincarnating thinking like a little kid when they realize they can do things by themselves. I can do it by myself. That's all that we hear from toddlerhood to possibly adulthood. I can do it myself. I can do it myself. And we never stop saying it. But then with these books by Andrea Lewis, we learn that none of us are flying solo. Our decisions affect a group, a bigger group than we imagine in both realms of life. It's like a chess game. You decide to move to the right or to the left, it affects the whole game. However we decide what we decide in this book, we're flirting, dating, getting married, having children. It's affecting a group in 2 realms, including the obsessors. Because we'll see in this book how even the obsessors in our lives get to be transformed by the decisions that we make. So today, Andrea Lewis, in this other chapter of the book, Evolution into Worlds, is going to make us understand in a more didactic way how our destinies are being, let's say, decided in a group effort. It's just an illusion that we are debt free and that we can do whatever we like without consequences. We're affecting those who will reincarnate or who will not be able to reincarnate because we're not opening up the opportunities due to our selfishness. Before we go on, I would need the help of Daisy, who has prepared a specific piece from the Spirit's book to introduce the thought that Andrea Lewis is going to complement. Okay? So I'll let Daisy bring that about before we go on. Thank you, Daisy.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So we're talking about justice, right? So I'm bringing here just a short introduction before we dive a little bit deeper on what Andrea Lewis brings to us. So talking about justice, thinking about it first here on the earthly plane. If we think about justice, we might think, in order to be just, there needs to be a law, right? A law that is somehow fulfilled or not fulfilled, broken or not, right? We might think about a trial or a court. Is there a trial or a court? So here we know that there are certain rules in our society that needs to be either fulfilled or not, and if not, it has consequences, right? You go through a court, a trial, there's a judge. And then depending on what happens, right, depending if the decision that is making through that trial, there's a verdict, we might think about it's a punishment or a sentence or probation, right, as we saw in this book. So these are terms we're very familiar, right, in our daily lives. We see it in our society, we know what is right or what is wrong. So tonight we're taking a step further and we're bringing God or the divine justice to this equation and thinking about it, okay, we know in our physical plane what justice is, but we're here tonight to talk about immortal justice. How does justice happen in our immortal lives? So we cannot understand justice or let's say in order to know more what the Spiritist teachings bring to us, it's fundamental that we go back to Kardec's books, right? Our foundation, the Spirit's book. And here is our guidelines. We cannot forget. So we know we live in the United States. There are certain rules. We need to know them. But how about our lives? Have you ever stopped to think, what are the rules and regulations of our lives? And if you don't know, and if you're not familiar, if you go to the Spirit's book, it's part 3, the third part of the Spirit's book. There, Kardec, in a very didactic way, outlined for us God's laws or the moral laws. So these are the laws that govern our lives as immortal spirits. And there are several laws. You can read about the law of worship, the law of labor, the law of reproduction, the law of society. But the last one of them, the kind in high spirits, to let us know that that is actually the most important law. So what is it, right? So if you go to this chapter 3, is the law of justice, love, and charity. And they say this is the most important law because it helps us advance the furthest, and it brings all the other laws together. So we know this is very important. So let's understand why this is important. So Kardec asked the higher spirits, how do you define justice? So we can talk about justice here on earth. What is justice? But he asked the high spirits. And from everything that they could let us know, their answer, at least for me when I read it the first time, was very enlightening. So what they said, justice consists of respecting the rights of others. Wow. So, as Vanessa was saying, that means that it's not only what I do for myself, right? Or the decisions that I make, as Vanessa was saying. Spiritists bring this understanding that we are all interconnected. And for us to fulfill justice, we need to respect the rights of others. So each one of us on this room, we have free will. God gave us free will. And through this concept of justice, we're learning that we have to respect the rights of others. So I think we cannot talk about justice or give examples without going back, I think, to our guide and model, Jesus, because he is the one who really came and fulfilled the laws to show us how this is. So Jesus came as the governor of our planet. So imagine you're building a house, right? Jesus built a planet for us, a whole house, from the foundation to the walls to the ceilings. You build for years and years, and you invite people to come and live at your house. You expect them, right, to take care of your home. And that's for each one of us. We were invited by Jesus to be here. But he came and he saw that there were a lot of things going on and a lot of things happening. But did you ever read that Jesus went there and knocked on Caesar's doors or stopped the Pharisees? You're doing this wrong, this should be this way and that way, let's change everything. No, he respect their rights at the time to do what they had to do. But, and that is a big but, that didn't stop him to fulfilling what he had to fulfill. So he fulfilled the law of justice by respecting the rights of others. But he let them be, but he didn't let them stop him from teaching and doing what he had to do. So knowing that, it's a great example for us to think that we're all interconnected. So Vanessa and I, when we were talking this week and we were studying, she gave this example, which I think it's a great example for us to think about the law of justice. So I have to respect the rights of others. So let's say we're in a meeting, a work meeting, and we might think in that situation, depending on our work environment, we have the right to stand up and maybe offend or speak a little louder with our colleague and scream, and that's okay, right? But in this law of justice, if I have the right to do that, I'm giving the other person the same right. So in circumstances in life, we need to think, what I'm doing, what would I like to receive, right? So if I think I have the right to stand up and scream at someone, how would I feel if I was in the other shoes? It's that exercise, putting ourselves, if I was receiving that. And that's a great way for us to think about the law of justice. So, but Kardec went one step further, and he asked the spirits, well, okay, so we know that justice is respecting the rights of others. So what determines those rights? And very interesting, he said two things. One is the human law, and the second one, the natural law. So let's think about this for a minute. Human law. We have the laws in our society, right? We hopefully are very familiar with those. So we know what is right and what is wrong. But if we look at our history, let's say medieval times, they had their law at the time. For us, we read history right now and we think it's monstrous, right? How was that permitted? But at the time, it seems that it was the correct thing. The same thing that 100 years from now, people gonna look at the laws in our society nowadays and might think, wow, how is that possible? That was permitted by the law. So human law regulates what we do in our society, but we know, and the spirits bring that to us, that this law, it's not perfect. It's evolving. It evolves as we evolve as humankind. And the spirits tell us these rights established by humans do not always conform with justice, with this justice that we're talking about, this divine justice. And that's the beauty how human law complements the natural law. And natural law here is just another term for God's law. Natural law, and then the spirits continue to explain, well, so what is this natural law, right? Well, if we look into, if we read, right, again, going back to the part 3, we have it outlined for us, these natural laws. And they say, well, but if this is something that, where is this written, right? The spirits ask, the Kardec asked the spirits, okay, where are God's laws written? Well, we know it's in the spirits' books now, you can read about it, but where is it, right? How do we know about it? And very straightforward, they said, it is in our conscience. It's within each and every one of us. But then they go a step further and ask, okay, but if it is within each one of us, right, this God's law, why do we need it to be revealed to us, right? Why do we need to read about it in the Spirit's book? Why do we need to continuously be reminded about it? So they say, well, you either forget about it or you put it aside. You disregard it. So a great way for us to think about these natural divine laws is to go back to Jesus. And Jesus told us, do to others what you like to receive. And if you use that in every circumstance of your life, you're really gonna be fulfilling God's law. Because if you do to others what you like to receive, right, putting yourself in those shoes, that is a great way for us to think about this natural law. So the natural law and the human law, they really come, and he said, it's not one or the other, they complement each other. So we have the laws in our society, but we also have God's laws. But at the bottom of everything, in the spirit, the high spirits bring to us in the Spirit's book, is in our conscience. So this is our GPS. It's like our internal GPS. If we're following it, we might be doing something that in the eyes of society is perfectly fine. It's great. You have a high position at work. You're respected by your colleagues. But are you really, in the eyes of justice that we're seeing tonight, this immortal justice, are you complying with that immortal justice? And the spirits are telling us, the only way to know it is within us, like the case we just saw in the sex investing. Sooner or later, and probably right now, we can already hear that GPS saying, no, don't go there. But as we read, right, we might forgot about these laws, we might disregard it, and we might make decisions in our lives that they don't conform with this. So Vanessa, through, I think, André Louis' books, is really gonna tell us more about what happens next and how justice is fulfilled in our immortal lives. Thank you.
A lot of food for thought already. Mamma mia. Breathe in and out, because this is just part 1. But think about this. It's in our conscience, but we forgot, we disregard, we take shortcuts, and that's where the problem begins. One of the areas that we make the greatest mistake is here. And we're not talking about sex, just sexual intercourse. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about relationships as a whole. Parents and children, as Daisy said, there are parents like, I'm fulfilling my duty, but they are not really loving their children. In the eyes of the world, oh yeah, she's a great mom, he's a great dad. But they are not really loving. I'll give you an example. The book Hechos que Proíbem by Amália Domingos Soler. In Portuguese, Reencarnação e Vida. In English, it's coming up. I've got to know that we have 15 cases on Kardec Radio's YouTube as 15 cases of previous lives. You can listen to this very case, but there are many more that are coming up thanks to the translation by Yvonne Limoges from Florida. So, Amália Domingos Soler, the great Spanish medium and spiritist, she reported in the 20th century the case of a woman of high society who had a son. And this son, she liked her son. He fell in love with the wrong person, right? He fell in love with a girl of a different socio-economic status. No. She said, okay, go ahead. If you want to date, you guys date. But when you need to get married, I'll tell you, your wife. Okay? Well, the day came along and she said, well, this is it for the two of you. I'm going to introduce to your future wife. And she knew that the girl and the boy loved each other. The story is longer than this, but to cut it short, do you think this mother really loved her son? To the eyes of society, oh yeah, of course. Why is she going to allow him to get married to somebody who doesn't have the same education, the same upbringing? Of course she loves him. No. The spirits came and told Amalia that this mother in a previous life was not the best friend of her son. So now we can put faces to the action. If you really love, you approve of the love of your child, whether convenient or not. When conveniences, beauty, work, socioeconomic relationships come first, it's not love. Marriage is not a business. That's why many marriages fall apart. It's convenient. You have a green card, I need a green card. We get married. Yeah, we will love each other. there's something behind it. Years later, divorce. Yeah, we're gonna get married because you have a good job, I have a good job. You're beautiful, I'm beautiful. We're gonna have beautiful kids, and the parents say it, right? You're gonna be beautiful kids, etc. And then years later, the recipe didn't come to the cake people expected because there were missing ingredients. So Amália Domingos Soler gets to know that in a previous life, her son was actually, the son of the story, was married to the very woman he loved. They were husband and wife. So it's possible to get married to the person you love and continue loving the person. That's the other side of the story too. It's not the rule, but it's possible. As Humberto de Campos says in one of his messages, and you can read in the Spiritist magazine, in the very last issue we just published, the beginning of April. You go spiritistmagazine.org or in the app. That issue 45, it says to us, family preparedness. He says 90% of marriages are expiation. So let's do our homework and understand what that means, okay? Leave it to that information. But in this case, he was married to that person. They loved each other. They had a daughter. The daughter loved them. They loved the daughter, apparently. But she fell in love with a musician. Musicians don't always get a good reputation. If it's hard for them to have a living nowadays, imagine way back when. So they said, no, you're not gonna stay with this guy. So the father exiled the man somewhere. Okay? And the girl felt depressed to the point she died. But she forgave the parents. She understood their point of view. But the guy who was exiled, died, didn't forgive them. Many things happen. The good spirits come, plan a reincarnation in this life. The husband reincarnates as the son. The woman who was the wife comes in the other socioeconomic status, inferior to them. And who is the mother? The man who was exiled. So, conclusion, he didn't forgive. He is avenging the spirit that now animates the body of the son. How many parents are committing such injustices? Not loving their children with their whole heart. It's easy to recognize. If we study the cases from the belly, you can tell this spirit and you need reconciliation. If people just knew, it would be easier. But they wait for teenage years to realize we don't get along. But it was there, written on the wall, vibratorily, since gestation. But we just dismissed. We didn't take measures. It grew stronger. Now we're facing the enemy. The enemy now is a teenager. Young adult, we don't get along, we have our dispute, and we're still dwelling with our children, not loving them, not opening our hearts to them, and vice versa, children to their parents, or spouses, between spouses. or between brothers and sisters, or in any other relationship. So because we forget and disregard, the good news is we don't resolve or take measures regarding justice alone. We have help. We have lawyers in the spiritual realm. The good thing, you don't need to pay for them. That's wonderful. And they are good lawyers, huh? We're not talking about bad lawyers. It's only happening in the incarnate level. At the discarnate level, lawyers are good. We don't call them lawyers, but we call them, they are going to advocate for the cause of somebody. But there are other spirits who are superior to all of us, who will be examining our case and pondering for us like parents, tutors, counselors, to tell us what is best for us. So let us go to André Luiz, because he's very clear how it works. And you can read in the book, Evolution into Worlds, chapter 6, part 2. Okay? It's right here. André Luiz begins with a question. He begins by asking, how does the mechanism of justice work in the spiritual plane? So it's interesting that he uses this expression, mechanism of justice. Because now we know what justice is. It's respecting the rights of others. But how do we make it be fulfilled? And in the spiritual realm means in real life. Because this life here is temporary. We're talking about the continuity of it all. So he begins to answer it by saying, certainly in the spiritual world, the authority of justice works with enhanced security. Why is he saying this? He's saying there is no bias. Bottom line. It's like the mother of Mr. Nogueira from the book Sex and Destiny. She can advocate for her son, but never against anybody. She's not saying, oh, please. No, she's saying, can he go there and help others? But she's not saying, please help him, but do not help X, Y, Z people. So it's good for us to know that you and I will be evaluated, but never against ourselves. And that's where security lies. There's no bias. The ones who are working on our cases to help us, they are not against us. So there's not like a persecutor to say, Vanessa did this, that, and the other, she needs to go to hell. Hell doesn't exist. And then others can say, no, come on, hell is too much. Can it be just the lower zones for a little bit? Right? That, forget about it, that doesn't happen in the spiritual realm. We're talking about a security that is securing the benefit of everyone, of all parts. That's why enhanced security. And he says more. He continues explaining to us, however, we know that the mechanism of regeneration first and foremost prevails in the conscience of the individual, as Daisy brought to us from question 621 of the Spirit's Book by Kardec. But observe this, mechanism of regeneration. What does that mean? If you see in biology, right, an organism that has the potential to regenerate, you hurt it, and it goes back, in other words. So we're talking about something that didn't work, and now we're going to make it work. Generate again. but to the right direction. There is a process. The mechanics of it all need to be understood, but everything lies in our conscience. So I can say, you know what? I'm not gonna bother. What? Helping people every day? Oh no, I need a break. I do it once a week, and that's good enough. But in our conscience, the law of work is the same. And it says, be useful all the time. It doesn't say once a week. Those who are awakened, they say, I can't waste my time any longer. Chico Xavier. But Chico, why don't you stop? Why would I? The law, I already know. Mamma mia. Can't stop. When we're still sleepy, we're like zombies. Like, right now I want to rest. I want to go for entertainment. There are many people who are in need, crying. And we are indulging in our lives. When I see today people who are working hard at organizations in Africa, it's sad to see the misery that people lived in there. But we always wonder why you need to experience that. Maybe because we abused. We overindulged. Now we need to have a little less to see what's most important in life. And you go there and you're surprised that people smile more than those who are here. Do we need to reincarnate that? To know it? Do I need to lose a limb or a loved one or my finances to understand that these are just means and not the end of my life? Do I need to buy a house at the beach to be happy while there are people who have no house at all? Do I need 2, 3 cars, whereas people have no car? What do we need to experience to understand that these are just unneeded necessities that we create? It's funny to say it, but we make it a necessity, but it's not needed. That instead of cultivating our relationships with the people in our lives and making it strive, we keep confiscating the love in its integrity with the people that we live with, the people that we work with, to just spend a little more love elsewhere. Cheating, flirting, in emotional negotiations that will potentially cost to us lives to come. Like André Louis' father. André Louis, in the book Nosso Lar, he gets to know that his father is stuck in the lower zones. Why? Because he stole, he robbed the banks, he was a bad politician? No. Just because he was intertwined with the energy fields of women whom he had sex with while being married. Things that at his time was just so normal for any husband to have a wife and have extramarital affairs. But it's costing him years stuck in low vibrations, intertwined with the spirits that he used to exchange his energies. Cause and effect, action and reaction, and action and its consequences. None of us, me either, have a clean past talking about immortality to point fingers at anybody. None of us. But that's not the point tonight. The point tonight is to know that our lives are lovingly being watched by cameras in the spiritual realm. By those who love us and guide us and cheer for us and are just saying, come on guys. You know, it's so funny. The other day I saw this video of a break in a basketball game in the US somewhere. And the mothers had their babies on court. And the goal was to have the babies cross part of the court to reach certain part. It was so cute. And they were like, go. And the babies would keep looking at the mother, not knowing. And there was a winner, but it wasn't easy to get the baby to the other side. And this is us in the good spirits. They're like, come on, go. And we're like, huh? And we're distracted, we're looking around, and you're like, oh, of course, just go. Just do it. And we're distracted, not knowing. But we have people cheering for us, guiding us, sponsoring us, literally sponsoring us. We see in the book Sex and Destiny, spirits who are giving of their vitality to us when we're sick, giving passes. They're literally sponsoring our vitality. In the Spirit's book, in another question, 642, it's one of the most interesting books ever. They explain to us that everyone must do the good to the best of their abilities. And many people are like, I'm doing my best. But they have an addendum. And everyone will answer for all the evil that has resulted from the good that was left undone. It's that banana skin that we see in the street and we say, I didn't do it. And a loved one comes, falls, breaks a leg. We were at fault. It's the good that we didn't do. Oh, but it's not on me. You're the one who was seeing it. Who else? Some people, like Pontius Pilate, conveniences. I wash my hands. It's not on me. And they are accumulating evils, that bad things that are left, the good that is not done, the evil that results from the good that is not done. And then you're like, I don't know why my life is stuck, why I don't feel the joy of living. Well, it's right here. You want to put in the list? Somebody asks you to do a mini favor, and you're like, and you don't. At home, you make tea for you. You don't make tea for your friend or your spouse. You get a glass of water for yourself. You don't think of others. Yesterday, in the God at Home that we do with Virginia, we do one just for her, for in children's mode. We read a story from the Spirit Luz in a book that is yet to be translated, Alvorada Cristã. The story is shocking. Through Chico Xavier, a boy in a family, a boy, brother of two sisters, of two girls, the mother and the father, so 5 people in a family. And Lucio says, this boy had a tantrum because he didn't like the shirt he was wearing. So he like, when they're about to leave to go to school, he throws a tantrum and he's like, oh my gosh, my life is this, that and the other. So the mother goes and the mother is trying to handle it. She starts feeling a headache. The father has to go to work. He stops to help the family. The sisters are all afraid. And Lucio tells us about the aftermath of that tantrum. To cut short, he says, it took the family 180 days, 6 months, to get back to track in terms of the mother's health, the father's consequences at work because he got late and what happened at work, what happened with the sisters in school, etc. And Neo Lucio says, just because of the tantrum of that boy. What a story, huh? We should read to every children. We say, thank you, Neo Lucio. We're not crazy when we see that and we really get out of our center. It really affects everybody. So the good that we don't do, that will result in evil, bad consequences for others, will be our responsibility. So Andrea Luiz says, in the spiritual realm, there are courts and there are shrines, but you don't need to be afraid, neither me. Because he says, we have here shrines and courts in which worthy and impartial judges examine the human responsibility, weighing their merits and demerits. Somebody who is not biased, other people who are more involved than us, will help us sort out each and every case. We are not capable yet of evaluating alone. So that's why when we make a decision, we need to attune with the group of spirits that are helping us. We have a reincarnatory plan. Can you please help me make the decision that is going to benefit the most people? Not only one person, 2 people, but people in 2 realms. There are people who are lined up to be our children, our grandchildren. And they are already planning when we are going to die and reincarnate to continue. Anything we change, it's a change for many people. So attuning with them in prayers and saying, I can't see it, but if you guys point to the direction, please, I'll have the courage to do what I need to do to benefit the most people and to avoid hurting not only one person, but people to come, children, grandchildren, and ourselves later on. There is a jury. He says in many cases the organization of the jury is necessarily observed. So there are people who are there to evaluate our cases and they have a voice. And he says more. The jury is composed of spirits who are deeply versed in law. It's not like our jury on earth. It's a joke, right? If you're a citizen, then you have the right. But who are we? Come on. We don't even know. And they have profound notion of guilt and redemption, error and connection, human psychology and social sciences. Isn't that great? We're relieved. Nobody's going to judge us without really knowing what they are doing. And they're not judging, they're just helping us put together our lives to the benefit of everybody. The sentences or information given are harmonious before the divine providence and are conjugated in love that illuminates and wisdom that sustains. That's good to know, that nobody's going to say, go, jail, prison. They're going to say, no, we're gonna help this person, they need to reincarnate in this place. Some of them will get to know, others will not. Some are able to handle the truth, others are not. So they need to go through the process until they awaken for the greater life. But the good thing is, there's no injustice. The justice from the spiritual perspective is really just. Harmonious sentences. What is harmony? True connection with the divine law. Leon Denis, in the book Spiritism in the Arts, he talks about harmony as the ultimate expression of God. When we talk about the arts, it's about that expression of harmony, beauty. And every Tuesday at Cardiac Radio, Fred Gouveia from New York with Rosanna Vaz, they do beautiful work, chapter by chapter at Cardiac Radio at 9:30 p.m. to go through each and every chapter. So to learn that love that illuminates and wisdom that sustains in the sentences that are given to us, they're saying us. So when we reincarnate, make no mistake, we don't reincarnate in the wrong family with the wrong people. When people say, I don't know why I reincarnated in this family, make a harder effort to understand, because you are not a victim, and there's no mistake in life. There's order in the universe. When we read André Louis' books, we see that everything is minutiously taken care of. In this book, Evolution into Worlds, we see how every single bit of life in the universe is being taken care by hands that were assigned by God to lead our lives. Even the animals' lives. When people are like, oh my gosh, the polar bears, they're dying. You bet. We need to do our part, but you think there are not good spirits taking care of the polar bears? Of course there are. But we need to help them on our end. Being aware of global warming, it's a sure thing. We spiritists, we believe in it because science says so. There's proof, there's evidence. It's not a belief actually, it's knowledge. It's a certainty. Global warming is a sure thing. And we need to contribute by, to say the least, planting more trees and cutting less trees and changing fossil fuels and many other things, right? Daniel works in sustainability, right? So we really need to know more and more and more how we do our end, but no desperation, because there are good spirits assigned by God to take care of every life in the planet, not only humans, plants included. And who are the delinquents who are going to be? There's a cute little magazine that we don't have in Portuguese that talked about obsessors. But who are the type of people that are going to be evaluated? André Louis says, there are delinquents in both terrestrial and spiritual planes, those who are recently discarnated and need to go for trials, the case of Mr. Nogueira. You need to read the book to observe how it happens. And just a parenthesis here. You've heard about cognitive dissonance, right? You've heard about the term before. Cognitive dissonance is when we know things but we're not consistent in terms of applying it in a way, right? So people say, I read the book. I know. But when we read it again, there's another angle we missed. The other day, I got a book purposefully to Virginia, 5 years old. It's a book about verbs and nouns for kids, but she's not learning verbs and nouns yet. But it's illustrated, has a story, and I read it for her. I read it. It's a story about verbs and nouns, They are characters in the book. She loved the book. She thought it was funny, but she understood nothing about verbs and nouns. If you ask her, what are verbs and nouns? But she loved the book. Mentor Joseph says, you see, this is us, Vanessa. We read these books, oh, I love it. But we still didn't get the verbs and nouns. So we need to read it again. If I show a child who is 9, 10, 11 years old the same book, verbs and nouns, they may like the story too, but they get what the book is about. The question is, we've read it, but did we really get it? So we need to read it again to see if we're matured to another level to really get the verbs and nouns. What is the book about? It's not about the story of two families who go crazy in their sexual affairs. It's crazy, the story. But the illuminated spirits bring to us not to tell a story, but to teach us about the choices we make, the errors in our encoding, and how the mercy of God ponders a way out. It's beautiful. Nobody is doomed to hell because it doesn't exist. And at the end of the book, you get a big surprise. The biggest of all. I won't say it, but some of you already know. But at the end of the book, it's the surprise of it all, related to the mentor of both families and the beauty of God's mercy. So though we're going to be evaluated, we may be the very discarnate delinquents who are entities that often succumb to passions and whims while in the fulfillment of certain tasks. Andrea Luiz also tells us at the end of the chapter that there are important rules to be observed in those mechanisms of justice. The lower the evolutionary level of the culprits, meaning the people who are indebted before God's law, the more strict is the trial by the authorities. I can only imagine cases of pedophiles, probably one of the worst to be sorted out by the good spirits. We really need very strict trial. We can already imagine the reasons why, because it's probably the most heinous crime of all times. The more cultural and morally advanced is the individual, the more complex is the examination of the dossier of crime entangled. Let's say we get to know a great religious person, like we talk about in Spiritism, but now it's spread out not only in the Catholic Church, in the Spiritist movement, but now in the Buddhist movement. One of the greatest, he is being told to be in this entangling of sexual harassment of apprentices. I won't say the name, but it's in the news. And we're like, how come? If we cannot understand, only the good spirits can sort it out and tell us, and tell them as well. So Andrea Luiz wraps up this chapter by saying that there are two reasons for the complexity of the cases that will be evaluated in the spiritual realm. It depends on the influence the crime had onto others' destiny. Again, we don't fly solo. We belong, we're a piece in a chess game. Any movement can cause. That doesn't mean we're not going to have the courage to do the right thing. Look at Jesus. In his time, culturally speaking, he was supposed to be with his family, helping his family, and being solely in that group. He broke all the protocols. He moved his piece beyond the board, the chessboard. But to a direction that benefited everybody, not only his family. It depends on the individual's conscience. When adjusted to the awareness of his own mistakes, the spirit is anxious to rehabilitate himself before life and before those whom he loves most. Thus, he supplicates for the punitive sentence he recognizes essential for his rehabilitation. Okay, there's a lot of words here, but let's break it down first in one thing. In this life, if we figure out that something was off, we still have time to put ourselves back on track. Look at the life of Saul of Tarsus. He made a huge mistake. In the book, Emmanuel says he deviated, he detoured. It was not in his reincarnatory plan to be the persecutor of Christians. It was not in Judas. Some people want to prove that Judas helped Jesus be the martyr that Christianity needed. A fallacy. He warned and said, some of you are going to. If it was, he wouldn't have warned anybody. For God's sake, it's in the history. It's told. It doesn't make sense. Nobody's doomed to commit an evil act. Everybody's born to do the good. It is on us to do it or to stay at the level that we are. But Saul of Tarsus, when he realized he was in the wrong direction, he took the consequences and worked for 30 ceaseless years. Difficult paths, but never stopped. 30 years. The day he discarnated, he ascended directly to Christ. You don't need another reincarnation to do the good. This is the one. Don't postpone it. Because what we postpone may take us centuries to get back to that level. Look at the medium Valdo Vieira. Did you know that this book was psychographed both by Valdo Vieira and Chico Xavier? They say here Chico Xavier, but it was by both. The first part was Valdo Vieira's mediumship, and the second was Chico Xavier's. Valdo Vieira was working side by side with Chico Xavier. And one day he said, I don't want to do it anymore. Dr. Marlene Nobre told Carlos and I, and we've heard from other people too, but Dr. Marlene Nobre was close friends with Chico, and she said, I asked, what's going to happen to Valdo? Because it was Valdo Vieira who introduced her to Chico and everything else. Chico said, well, Emmanuel said that it's going to take 15 centuries for Valdo Vieira to be given that same opportunity. 15 centuries. So when we think, I'm gonna do next life, think twice, because next life may be in 15 centuries, in 20 centuries. And the difference between Valdo Vieira and us is that he was the instrument of the information that now we know. But now we know what he was an instrument of our knowledge. So if we make a mistake now, it's probably worse for us. Because now we know what he probably didn't know, because we have more literature now than he used to have at his time. And the impact of our choices in people's lives. To wrap up and to take the message to the most important part, so we help the good spirits who want to help us. If we don't do the good that needs to be done, and an evil is left as a result, let us remember of a story that is in the book Heaven and Hell by Kardec. The story of a young man, true story, of a young man who lived with his aunt at her farm. She was older than him, he was much younger, very youthful, but he was lazy. Let's talk about little things, right? We think laziness, which is so present in our daily lives. Lazy, he would say, oh, let her do the jobs. She would have to take care of many things and he would help just a little bit. She got sick, very sick, died. A few months later, she was caught in an accident. He died. After he discarnated, he got to know that he was responsible for the death of his aunt. He didn't kill her directly, but he killed her by extenuating her vitality, the spirits say. By being lazy, he didn't do the good that he was supposed to do. And it extenuated the vitality of his aunt. We need to tell this story to our children. When they say, I don't want to help. You sure? Because the good that is left undone generates evil. And the evil is your responsibility. But we can only teach them if we do it our part. Is there anybody in our lives who is extenuated by overworking because we are not doing our part? It's on us to decide. The obsessors do not want us to achieve the next level of excellence, but as mentor tells obsess every day. Vanessa, we all have a choice to be mediocre, average, or to excel. It's up to you to decide. If you want to excel at washing the dishes, cleaning the house, loving your family, taking care of our community, or if we want to be mediocre, average, doing things just passing by life and postponing for centuries the good that we're supposed to do. As a good spirit said the other day, thank God the sun is not tired of coming every day to shine his light on us. And so shall we be, inspired by the sun, be present, fully present, wherever we are, to shine God's light. And you can go to sleep or come back the next day. But be present, constant, consistent in shining our lights. We hope that this knowledge that André Luiz is giving to us is just boosting and empowering the best in us. Telling us, I can do it. And I'm not alone. There are good spirits helping us. Anybody has a question before we wrap up? Question. Question. No comment, just a question. Okay. So now we're gonna dim the lights and receive from